Live from Washington, D.C., Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Sekulow.
The Iran regime, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has pulled one on the United States of America, and we let them do it. We've set up a government accountability project inside our Office of Governmental Affairs in Washington, D.C., because we will be prepared, as we've had on so many occasions now, to go to court against the administration, whether it's the State Department, Homeland Security, the Internal Revenue Service. We are not going to take this for granted, and we're not going to let ourselves be fooled. So rest assured that you live in the greatest country in the world, and that we're going to be fighting for freedom for you and your family, your kids and your grandkids every single day. And again, your support of the ACLJ this last month really made a huge difference. We met our goal, and I really, all of us really appreciate that. Logan, let's go ahead and jump right into the phones.
Yep, let's go back to phones again. A lot of you guys have been holding. We appreciate it. Let's go to Pam, who has been holding the longest right now. I'll watch it on Facebook and in Macon, Georgia.
Hey, Pam.
Hey. Hi.
I do like Macon, Georgia, by the way. I need to say this, and you're Macon, Georgia. I went to law school in Macon at Mercer University. Did 2 years at Mercer, 1 year at Emory, but my degree's from Mercer. And I've got fond memories of Macon. Where in Macon do you live? I bet I know the area.
Off of Riverside.
I do know it. Nice area, Riverside there. Very nice.
At least it was in
1977 through 1980. But anyways, Pam, go ahead.
Okay. Well, my question was about the government accountability. You haven't really talked about it yet, but that's okay. Because I just don't understand why Congress can't do anything. And then I also saw where Congress and the press asked the State Department where the $130 billion came from. Where'd it come from? And they wouldn't answer.
For the Iran deal. So, look, I think it's fair that we don't tag Congress too hard here. I mean, there are areas where, believe me, we've been hard on Congress. A lot of this information that we're able to get and that we're talking about is because Congress is taking action on oversight here. I mean, that's just fact.
It's not every member of Congress that's at issue. It's not every conservative member of Congress that's not fighting back. In fact, that's how we get these hearings. That's how we get a lot of this information. But ultimately, there were some questions about, and this really came down to the Senate. You got a lot more moderates in the Senate.
Right.
Too many who want to play nice with the President of the United States, in my opinion. And then too many Democrats who will talk tough on issues like Israel and Iran and then go along with whatever the Democrat president does. So Republican problem and Democrat problem. And I think that's what you saw in this deal that Dan is still upset about, is that Congress allowed the Obama administration to tell them this is not a treaty, that this is not something they get oversight on. And that's really not the administration's job, but Congress accepted that. And I think by Congress doing that, it gave the Obama administration this opportunity to move forward in this very unprecedented way to put forward a agreement with an enemy, open up world markets,
still an enemy.
Remove sanctions officially at the UN. So that was what was officially done here.
Right.
What was actually done here on paper is that the UN removed the sanctions from Iran. And so what happened? Well, they get to do business with the world. The S-300 missile defense system, which is Russian-made, is now installed in Iran, and they're able to utilize a much more high-powered system. Where are they using them? Where have they already? See, this is why we're finding out more. Iran's bragging. They're putting them around their nuclear bases.
I'm going to play the bite when we come back from the break from David Albright on this, because I think it's important to understand that. And I'm also going to play some other sound that I think is very relevant to where this discussion is going. We've got a lot more ahead, but folks, let me encourage you. We're in federal court right now against the State Department because of the false statements given to the American people about this deal with Iran. If you want to help us hold the government accountable, then join with us right now at aclj.org. You can sign that petition, aclj.org, or 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org, or 877-989-2255.
The Obama administration is corrupt and unethical. It has deceived the American people, misled Congress, and now making multiple misrepresentations in federal court. One federal court just held that the Obama administration was, quote, intentionally deceptive, unethical, and acting surreptitiously. It violated a court order against an unconstitutional executive action. Then it, quote, misled the court. The bottom line, all of this is shocking and reprehensible. At the American Center for Law and Justice, we're taking action. We're fighting to hold the Obama administration accountable in court, demanding real justice. We're urging oversight from Congress. And we're sending legal letters to the Obama administration. Sign on to our new petition right now. You can be a part of this. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.
All right, let's go ahead and go right back to the phones, Logan, because people have been holding for a long time because we've got a lot to go. We're covering a lot of material today.
That's right. Let's go ahead. Let's go to Joe, who's calling in Lakeland, Florida, on line 6.
Hey, Joe, welcome to the broadcast. You're on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the call,
Sure.
and I appreciate all you're doing to try to hold this government
Thanks.
accountable. My question is this, Jay. The currency that was paid to Iran, I know that wasn't done in U.S. currency
Correct.
for all the reasons you've stated, but is that currency traceable?
No.
Can we find out?
Yeah, this is they did this on purpose. I mean, first of all, they acknowledge, I don't know if we can find this, Will, but let's see if we can find the statement where John Kirby acknowledges that this money will be used, it could well be used for the state sponsor of terrorism. We'll look for that bite. I'm going to play it because I think it tells you why. But, Jordan, let's recast exactly, and then I'll let Dan comment on this, too, because Congress is not too happy about it, nor are we. And that's, again, another reason we're in court on this. That $400 million was washed money, basically.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, so you've got it's impossible to track, and even it may not even be a U.S. currency. It may be through Swiss currency,
Euros.
the euro, and
Gold.
It was supposed to be right, and even in
Hard.
yeah, hard transferable, if you will, currency. I mean, and so different ways to pay. It's supposed to be interest when you hold this money in limbo. But the question is whether this was ultimately this Iranian government's money to get back.
No.
Anyways, but the U.S. was willing to say, yes, it is. Well, this will be part of our deal.
Even though DOJ was very nervous about it.
Very. And that tends for me to believe that this was coming from U.S. taxpayers.
Yeah, I tend to think that, too. Than, what's your thoughts?
Their excuse for using the foreign currency was that this is Iran's money in the first place. But listen, the $1.3 billion that was allegedly interest on the original $400 million, we know that was paid with U.S. dollars because we can see the 13 transfers of $100 billion minus 1 cent each from the Treasury Department to the State Department that was then sent to Iran. So, an amount 13 cents less than the $1.3 billion, that was the money headed to Iran. That was U.S. taxpayer money.
Yep. All right. So, Josh Earnest, President spokesperson. They don't deny it, folks. Where that was that money? It was a great call. Was that money could it be used for terrorists? Here's Josh Earnest.
The president was quite forward-leaning in advance of the nuclear deal even being completed, in acknowledging that we know that Iran supports terrorism. We know that Iran supports Hezbollah and the Assad regime. And it certainly is possible that some of the money that Iran has is being used for those purposes too.
Why in the world would you give it to them? I mean, let's think about this rationally for a moment. Why in the world are we letting them get away with this? If the Nazis were in power and we had the money from the Germans before the Nazi regime, would we give that money back to the Nazis because we're trying to get a deal with the Nazis? And by the way, I'm not using that as a pejorative. Benjamin Netanyahu said that it's a Nazi-like threat with the Iranians. Why is this okay? Why is this palatable? It should not be. And unfortunately, you got to go to federal court to get answers, which we're going to do. And we are doing. But the fact is, they think they're going to get away with this. They will not. We'll take more calls and comments.
All right, let's go to Helene, who's calling from Huntsville, Alabama, on line 5. Helene, welcome to JSECO Live. You're on the air.
Hey.
Hi. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for what you're doing. The fact that you're taking him to court and all that stuff is great. I have to agree with you. The last 72 days is going to be, that's when he's going to have all his power. And especially if Hillary doesn't get elected, then he's definitely going to have to do a lot because he's counting on her to carry out his stuff.
I think I think you're exactly and precisely correct. I mean, the 72 days, I think, are the most dangerous as far as policy matters goes for the administration. And we are setting up, and again, I'm saving this for the next half hour of the broadcast, but we're going to get into the Government Accountability Project at the ACLJ because we really believe that this is going to be a major, major fight. And I think we're ignoring reality if we don't think the president's going to do everything from trying to close Gitmo to I can't even imagine what the executive actions. I'm sure they've lined them up, Jordan.
Well, and also depending on we'll know who the next president will be. Then you've got the idea that moderate Republican senators waffling on Supreme Court nominees. I mean,
that's already starting.
That did already start this week. And yes, they always come back and say no, not this year. I mean, again, not this year. And you've got these 20-day window between the start of the new year and President Obama leaving office. All these concerning statements. This is that time. This is when President Obama likes to act. He likes to act a bit in the shadows. He likes to act when Congress is not paying attention, when Americans aren't paying attention, when they're already thinking towards the future. And I think some of that will be based off who the next president, who the incumbent is, but some will not. He will still move forward with things regardless of if it's Hillary Clinton coming into office or Donald Trump.
Than, you're concerned about an influx of refugees that will be unprecedented.
Well, Secretary Clinton has already said that she wants to dramatically exceed the 10,000 from Syria that are already here. Listen, I think no matter who is elected, I think President Obama is going to try to accomplish that agenda that she's been talking about during those 72 days.
All right, let's go to Tommy, who's calling in North Dakota.
Hi, Tommy.
Hey, Jay, looking forward to working with you in the future. This is the deal. Let's be really clear here, and I have a comment, by the way.
Okay.
The narrative is globalization.
Yep.
If it wasn't globalization, back in the day we were thinking, yeah, it's globalization. We couldn't prove it. Go watch the Warsaw speech. Obama says globalization is inevitable multiple times. We're talking about the very sovereignty of our nation here. So not just you, but every freedom-loving American right now needs to stand up, not worry about being labeled a radical. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, acts like a duck, it might be a duck.
Well, let me tell you this. He's not hiding his globalist agenda. I mean, this isn't like some secret. I mean, he's saying who he is. He's been saying it since that Cairo speech. I blame this whole administration starting with the Cairo speech. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to play it again. Because, folks, when you deny the Judeo-Christian heritage of our country, guess what? You reap what you sow in one sense, and this is some of the policy we're starting. Here's what he said.
I've said before that one of the great strengths of the United States is, although as I mentioned, we have a very large Christian population, we do not consider ourselves a Christian nation or a Jewish nation or a Muslim nation. We consider ourselves a nation of citizens.
This is the most ridiculous statement I have ever heard. 8 years later, a nation of citizens. Well, every nation's a nation of citizens. The totalitarian regimes, they're citizens. They just have no citizen rights. We're not a Jewish nation. We're not a Christian nation. Basically, we're to deny the heritage. That's what you get.
This is what Arthur just said. It's not about what Iran is going to do, but when.
Yeah, absolutely the case. What is the time frame, Jordan, that they're saying now is the... Originally, they said it was a 10-year. It would take them 10 years. The Israelis have said that's not true. And under the way this is coming out, what is the realistic time frame where they can go nuclear?
Under the actual agreement, it's a 10-year and then another additional 5. So be 15 before they can have a full nuclear weapons program without any international oversight under that deal. But 10 years before they could start. With this new information that's come out, that's now ongoing. So that timeline is totally thrown out there. It's a fake. We knew it was fake already. But now we know that it's basically Iran operating the same nuclear program that they were before this agreement was in place.
All right. We'll be back with more of your phone calls. Don't forget, we are holding the administration and State Department accountable. We are in federal court right now. If you want to help us hold the government accountable, then join with us right now at aclj.org. You can sign that petition. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 877-989-2255.
The Obama administration is corrupt and unethical. It has deceived the American people, misled Congress, and now making multiple misrepresentations in federal court. One federal court just held that the Obama administration was, quote, intentionally deceptive, unethical, and acting surreptitiously. It violated a court order against an unconstitutional executive action. Then it, quote, misled the court. The bottom line, all of this is shocking and reprehensible. At the American Center for Law and Justice, we're taking action. We're fighting to hold the Obama administration accountable in court, demanding real justice. We're urging oversight from Congress. And we're sending legal letters to the Obama administration. Sign on to our new petition right now. You can be a part of this. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.
We are announcing our government accountability project that has been put in place, especially for the 72 days between the presidential election and the new president being sworn in. We think that could be the most dangerous time for the Obama administration, and we are going to be prepared for action as we always are. We're already in court on multiple cases. We will be in for more. But we've got a lot of people that have been holding for a while. We're going to get through these calls, Logan, the best we can.
All right, Mary Ellen in Chicago. Thanks for holding.
Hi, Mary Ellen. Go ahead.
Hi, Jane Jordan. Support all you do.
Thanks.
But I have a quick question after listening to this discussion about Iran. After the cow's been let out of the barn, what specifically does your lawsuit do to stop anything that they've done?
Well, the lawsuit can't stop them from doing anything. But the lawsuit can tell us what happened with this whole arrangement. And ultimately, that impacts how people view the government. It impacts how people have a knowledge. In other words, the increased knowledge you get gives an informed citizenry. And an informed citizenry is better for governance. So we have the right to be informed. We have the right to petition our government for redress of grievances. I am not going to pretend to tell you that this lawsuit, Jordan, is going to stop the Iranians. It's not. But it's going to let the administration, and if it's a Hillary Clinton administration or Donald Trump for them or whoever it is, that we're going to find out who's telling the truth and who's not.
Yeah, I mean,
an informed citizenry is very important.
Very important, especially as we are approaching a presidential election where the next president of the United States can determine they could try to reverse this deal. It's not easy to do so, or they can keep it going. And I think that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are both going to have to answer that in the presidential debates coming up.
But, Than, you bring up a very important point in that sanctions can technically go back up.
Yeah, listen, there's been a lot of damage done, and you can't undo it in one fell swoop. But the way you start to turn the ship around is to pass sanctions again and to start build them back up against Iran. That's not going to happen, Jay, unless the full disclosure of what happened in this deal is known. That's why we need the information. Then we push Congress to start putting those sanctions back in place.
Absolutely correct. All right, let's grab another call.
All right, Shelby in Virginia on line 1.
All right, Shelby, we'll get some comments ready, too. Shelby, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Simple question. If we're at war with terrorism and Iran is recognized as the number one supporter of terrorism, why isn't working a deal with Iran an act of treason or at least criminal in some sort of way?
It's not treason because the standard for treason is so difficult and such a high bar. It's a policy decision. It is a horrible policy decision with disastrous consequences. So here's what you've got. We are given access to assets for the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that, to me, is absurd. I mean, period. I don't think there's no way to explain. I think the whole thing, this is absolutely, positively absurd.
All right, let's continue on. Let's go to Scott in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Hi, Scott.
I guess I kind of had a question, maybe answered somewhat, but I was wondering what the recourse would be with all these lies and deceptions that are coming out about this.
So look, people that are engaged in lying to the American people that are government employees can ultimately be held accountable. I mean, let's not kid ourselves there. Now, that you're not seeing with this administration, obviously. But we're going to get to the bottom of these. Look what we did with the IRS case. I mean, here you had the government targeting of American citizens, and we went to federal court, went to the Court of Appeals, the court right under the Supreme Court of the United States, and beat the United States Department of the Treasury and the Obama administration's Department of Justice at the Court of Appeals. Beat them back. So that's what you do, and then you hold them accountable, and you don't surrender, and we're not going to do that. That's part of. You got to fight. You can't lose hope in all of this. That's what I'm saying. So our government accountability project is to do everything it can to keep things in check. Then working with our government affairs team will do the same. It's part of what we do. It's why we are on radio every day as well. Let's take another. Yeah, go ahead. No,
you can make it tougher, too. I mean, on Iran. If the U.S. cannot force the world to reimpose sanctions on Iran, but it's certainly we can make sure U.S. businesses, we're the strongest economy. There's also military action you can take. You want to really up the ante on Iran, you can take out all their nuclear bases in about 35 minutes.
Right. Let's not forget. Let's underscore that.
If you're willing to commit resources and understand they're going to respond, we have to get Israel prepared and other allies in the region, probably Saudi Arabia in the Gulf area. But we have a military that they don't care about their S-300 system. Our bombers could
35 minutes.
Yeah, probably 35 minutes. Yeah. So we had the right place to launch from, and we used sufficient bombs, sufficient explosives, and it would cause a major issue because it's nuclear sites. But Iran should remember that. I think it's always in the back of their mind that quickly Tehran can be flattened.
We are the United States of America. We have the strongest military in the world. The Israelis, the Saudis are all with us on this.
You think the Russians, they may not like this idea, but they're not going to do anything about it if we did it.
They're not going to get into an international conflict.
They're not.
But they are going to utilize the Iranians and the Syrians as long as they can.
Yeah.
We'll take more calls and comments.
All right, let's go on. Lots of calls still. Brian in Littleton, Colorado, you're on the air.
Hey, Brian.
Well, thank you for your time, gentlemen. And the reason why I'm calling is to ask this question that I think we all know the answer, those of us that are not living under a rock. What is their ultimate goal? What was Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, and the rest of them thinking when they were there with their children, their grandchildren, on their knees signing these papers there over in Iran a number of months ago?
Well, there are no documents in Iran. Let's be very clear here. There's no signed anything of substance. Okay, there's no signed deal or contract. What were they thinking? This was the Obama administration, Jordan completing the narrative.
Yeah,
this was the end game of the narrative. They started, by the way, the moment he was sworn in. He had Valerie Jarrett in contact with Ahmadinejad's people. This was not done under Rouhani, the so-called moderate, who, believe me, is no moderate. That was the lie to the American people, Brian, from the get-go.
Yeah, and we know, first of all, they didn't do this in Iran.
Right.
That's how little respect Iran has for the United States. They're not inviting U.S. officials to be there and sign this deal. In fact, the entire time they were saying what the U.S. is saying that's in this deal is not in this deal. And I think that's what's led to these reports to come out and tell us exactly what is or is not part of this deal. But the Iranians, ultimately, they got everything they wanted. They got their money back from the United States. They get to keep their nuclear program. They get to keep a nuclear weapons-ish program.
Right.
And in 10 years, they can start a full-on nuclear weapons program.
Right.
They got all the sanctions lifted from the UN.
Right.
So they got their S-300 missile defense system that they ordered years ago, finally delivered by Russia to place at their nuclear facilities, which they already have. And they're open back up to the world economy, all without a single change in leadership.
Not a single change in leadership. Here is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressing exactly what I just said.
The UN is celebrating now, not celebrating, but marking its 70th anniversary. That's 70 years after the defeat of Nazism. And in many ways, the UN was established after the horrors of World War II and especially the Holocaust. Now, 70 years after the murder of 6 million Jews, Iran's dictator, the Ayatollah Khamenei, promises to murder another 6 million Jews, the citizens of Israel.
There you have it. I mean, it's not legally treason under the law, what the Obama administration did. It doesn't meet the qualifications of treason. But I will tell you something. A policy of disaster. But that 72 days, folks, in between the election and the new president being sworn in, buckle your seatbelts.
Yep, calls and comments coming in. There are some comments that people are reaching out. A lot of people are just shocked. What a shame. These comments are the typical ones that are coming in. The chaos is coming.
The chaos is here, actually.
Yep. This is a question that came in. Why is everyone worried about accountability after the fact? We should stop worrying about them before the damage has been done.
Because the accountability project that we've launched, that's a good question, is to have a check. You're supposed to have checks and balances. And this will give a checks and balance to the administration. So we can file those FOIA requests. We can go to federal court. We will be ready. But buckle your seatbelts. It's going to be a wild ride. Let's take another call.
All right, let's continue on going. Let's go to Richard in New York.
Hey, Richard, go ahead.
Hey, Richard. Hey, Jay, how are you?
Good.
Jay, I'm a retired iron worker out of New York City.
Yes,
I was
sir.
injured on 9/11. I just want to know one thing. I'm still waiting for people to be accountable for that. What are we going to do with the people when we find them that are involved in this?
Look, listen, elections have consequences. I mean, and Richard, I wish I could tell you, elections have consequences. Who you vote for makes a difference. You've had an administration for the last 8 years that basically is not going to address this. And Congress has done, and I don't think it's fair to attack all of Congress. Some in Congress, I agree, have not done their job, but we've been involved in a lot of hearings that have gotten to the bottom of a lot of these issues.
Well, and I think by now, Jay, we pretty much know what happened. The administration told us one thing about the deal and then approved a very different thing with Iran. I think the recourse that happens is the next president of the United States needs to treat this deal for what it is, a non-deal, needs to count it as void. And by the way, one of the two major parties, Jay, that was in their platform. So I think treating it as a non-deal definitely could happen. That's the recourse we should be after, not what necessarily happened or who specifically did it.
All right.
Mike in Ventura, California.
Hey, Mike.
Two quick questions.
Yep.
How can we support the Government Accountability Project, and what does these new Iranian details say about President Obama representing American interests?
Well, it tells you that he was representing his narrative is what he was representing when he went to seek, and it's exactly what he did. When he went to seek the Iranian deal. He was completing his narrative. The Government Accountability Project, you're going to get an update from me today on the announcement of our Government Accountability Project, how that 72 days, we're going to have a special team inside the ACLJ monitoring every single action of the administration, filing briefs, legal letters, lawsuits if necessary, to monitor whenever action we think is overstepping the constitutional authority, which this president seems to have no problem trying to do, but we're holding him accountable for it. So that's how it's going to work. And it's an important project. I mean, I think Jordan and real quickly, Jordan and Than, it's important for people to understand we're going to be on top of this.
Yeah, and especially preparing for the next president. I think what we learned from this liberal president, and we had this unprecedented kind of stalling out in Congress, expecting the same regardless if it's a Trump or Clinton presidency, but we have to be ready for this. So we have to be ready for, I think, it's a Trump presidency, the bureaucracy really going out of control on him.
On him.
Yeah.
That will go after him.
I will tell you from working inside some of these agencies, they will try to undermine
the president of the United
especially
States.
when they're Republican.
Yeah.
And so that's a big concern, regardless of the side of the aisle that holds the White House.
We also really need people to stay engaged with us during that time period, because remember, Congress is going to turn over in the middle of it. We're going to need your help to reach out to both the member leaving and the member coming in.
Folks, we need your support. We are filing lawsuits. We are engaging this issue. We've got a petition up right now, which is, do not let the Iranians get even more money from the United States. Go to aclj.org. Stand with us as we hold the Iranians accountable and the administration accountable. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. You can take a stand for freedom today. Protect our interests now. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. Pray for our team here at the ACLJ as well. We'll talk to you next week.
The Obama administration is corrupt and unethical. It has deceived the American people, misled Congress, and now making multiple misrepresentations in federal court. One federal court just held that the Obama administration was, quote, intentionally deceptive, unethical, and acting surreptitiously. It violated a court order against an unconstitutional executive action. Then it, quote, misled the court. The bottom line, all of this is shocking and reprehensible. At the American Center for Law and Justice, we're taking action. We're fighting to hold the Obama administration accountable in court, demanding real justice. We're urging oversight from Congress. And we're sending legal letters to the Obama administration. Sign on to our new petition right now. You can be a part of this. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.